Record early vote turnout in Georgia. Trump has been doing interviews, and wow, Harris continues her press blitz and is starting to go on right-wing media. We look at some leaked Republican Senate polling. Then we'll talk to an expert about the white evangelical political movement. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, Jason, like a lot of people, I was going down the polling rabbit hole over the past few days, and there's been polls all over the place, but certainly some plenty of reasons to have people concerned. But then I was like, you know what? Actually, people are voting right now.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually much better data than any of the polls that we have. We have at least 7 million people as of this recording Wednesday afternoon who have voted early in the 2024 election. As you mentioned, Georgia had a record day. I think we have a clip of folks waiting in line there. Yeah, look at this. Amazing stuff. And over 300,000 people turned out to vote on the first day of voting in Georgia. You can go to the Georgia Secretary of State website. They are reporting returns every hour. Georgia doesn't report party registration, but they do include race and they do include county level data. And here's what we know, and I'm going to quote from Michael McDonald, who's a professor at the University of Florida. He tweeted this based on yesterday's results. He said, Georgia had 305,895 in-person early votes yesterday. Georgia doesn't have party registration in their tallies, but they do have race and Hispanic ethnicity on their voter file. Yesterday, non-Hispanic whites were 56.4% of in-person voters. For the full 2020 early voting period, they were 58.2%. So trending slightly ahead of the total early vote in terms of non-white voters, which he suggests is probably decent news for Democrats. Tom Bonnier, who's another data guru at TargetSmart, basically said that Black voters are a higher percentage of the early vote. And then there's another data guru named Michael Pruser who says if you want to look at the county by county, a good sign would be if Democrats are closer to their 2022 total electoral vote share of the early votes in DeKalb County and Fulton County. We don't have that data yet. He said he was going to update that today. So by the time you listen to this as a podcast, it might be up. I'll tweet it out when I see it. I'll pause there to say modestly good news for Democrats. Certainly no alarming news there.
Yeah, it sounds like it's basically trending in a way that is very similar to the early vote in 2020, which would be, I think, actually really good news, not just because we won Georgia, it was close, but we won Georgia in 2020, but also because we're operating under the assumption, or we are operating under the concern that the huge influx of early vote and Democrats doing better in the early vote could also have been a product of COVID in 2020. And so if you end up in a place where the early vote trends are very similar to the early vote trends in 2020, it would mean two things. One, it would mean we would be ahead in the early vote, but it would also mean that that 2020 was not a COVID-based early voting focused election.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So the baseline assumption should be, even in a good year, we would expect a worse performance in the early vote than in 2020 because Democrats were more COVID conscious. Trump was telling his people not to use the early vote or absentee ballots, which were commingling these numbers in a lot of states. So again, yeah, you're right. If they hit their 2020 numbers, great. If they outperform the 2020 numbers, even better, right? And in certain cases, we have 2022 numbers, and you talk about the percentage turnout, right? Because it's different size of the electorate. But whenever you're seeing numbers exceeding 2020 or matching 2020, that's good news for Democrats. It certainly isn't dispositive. You could always have an overwhelming amount of people show up on election day, right? That certainly happened in 2020 where it was close after that. There was a lot of Trump people who turned out. So none of this is dispositive. But it is to say what's good news or bad news at this moment. And let's go to Pennsylvania, because this is important. When you got people in your life panicking, because there's a lot of just straight up misinformation out there. Trump said that he is ahead in the early vote in Pennsylvania. That's what he said. Now, it's important to keep in mind that Pennsylvania doesn't offer actual early voting, but they do make absentee and mail-in ballot applications available for voters in person up to 50 days before the election day. So functionally, it's early vote. So Trump says he's ahead. Let's fact check this claim. Well, registered Democrats are 65.9% of the votes cast thus far in the early vote, right? That number will keep changing. So, number one, registered Dems are a lot of the vote. Now, comparing that to 2020, again, that's what we do here. Registered Democrats were 64% of the mail-in ballot in 2020. So we're trending slightly ahead. And Biden won 57.71% of the mail-in ballot in 2020 in Pennsylvania. So a smaller number than total registered Democrats because there's some crossover vote there. We won't know what the actual votes cast are until Election Day, obviously, or beyond. But again, trending ahead, Jason, of where we were. Trump, surprise, is making shit up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something to keep in mind when we talk about early vote is that, one, we already know that Democrats are predisposed more toward the early vote than Republicans. But the other thing is that it's a far better measure of enthusiasm than any poll. Because if you've got people standing in line, like that video showed in Georgia, standing in line 3 weeks before the election to vote, they're doing that not just out of convenience. They're doing it because they're like, I'm ready to vote. Like, let's do this already. And, you know, a percentage of those folks, probably somewhere, or from what those numbers lead us to believe is what, somewhere around 40 to 45% of those folks are Republicans who are enthused to do it, it sounds like. But that means that there's an awful lot of Democrats that are enthused to get out and vote. And that is a good sign. It is hilarious that Trump's like, somebody probably told them you're leading in the early vote, or they didn't. He just made it up. But unless he's getting the majority of registered Democrats, I don't think he's leading in the early vote in Pennsylvania.
Well, this is that time of year where everybody becomes an expert, right? The Ukraine experts are now voting experts. So people are picking individual precincts. And again, like if people are looking for folks to follow here, follow Tom Bonnier at TargetSmart, Michael Pruser, who's a data guru, and Michael McDonald at the University of Florida. And Michael McDonald has a lot of good tools. He has a website that rolls up a lot of the data if you want to look at that. Now, it's important to mention in Georgia, we got good news in the past 24 hours. There was this BS provision that they were going to have hand-counted ballots, which would have totally screwed everything up. A judge blocked that. So that is useful news. So at least that's one. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on Georgia court, so it always feels like there's another court somewhere to change things. But like at least at the moment, that's good news because otherwise there would have been true mayhem after Election Day.
This is a movement that exists, by the way, on the right, the movement to hand count everything. In fact, the Secretary of State candidate for the Republicans in Missouri, like his big thing is every ballot should be hand counted, which, you know, when you have a really close race and you need a recount, like every ballot gets hand counted, but also everything. When you do them through machines the first time, your accuracy tends to be higher. So yeah, they are trying to create chaos when they try and move the hand count thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, quick on Michigan. Our friend Jocelyn Benson just held a press conference a few minutes ago. They released their own data tool. I have not a chance to look through it yet.
Jocelyn's the Secretary of State in Michigan.
Yes. And early vote officially begins October 21st there, but they have absentee balloting. 670,000 people have turned out in Michigan so far. That's 30+% of voters who've requested ballots. The return rate, this is from the Detroit News. The return rate as of Tuesday is slightly lower than around the same time in 2020. 3 weeks out from the 2020 election, about 34% or nearly 1 million ballots had been completed in return of the 2.8 million requested that year. Benson sent absentee ballot applications to each Michigan voter in an effort to promote remote voting options during the pandemic. So again, we're talking about different context. I actually read that as good news, relatively speaking, that we're even anywhere in the vicinity of that number. If it's slightly below pandemic levels, that's still a pretty good turnout, right? I don't know, in contrast to Georgia and Pennsylvania, I don't have a lot of data to say who those people are yet. So I hesitate to say whether that's good or bad news for Democrats.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that unlike Republicans, Democrats in greater number have just gotten used to that's how they vote, right? I mean, it's not just, well, even though the pandemic's not going on, I think I'm still going to do it that way. It's like, if that's how you voted in the past two elections, that's how you vote now. And we get into patterns in life. And so this just may be the pattern that a lot of these folks are in. So
yeah. Well, we should pray for very good early vote and then extremely frigid temperatures, unseasonably cold weather on Election Day. So with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we got a whole lot to talk about. There's a whole lot of crazy in Trump's world. Kamala Harris has shifted strategy and also gotten way out there more with the press and some right-wing press, as you mentioned. We've also got some cool down ballot stuff going on, including Colin Allred, who absolutely handed it to Ted Cruz. All this and more when we come back. No man wants to lose his hair, but for men, it's actually very common. And now with Hims, the solution is simple. Try Hims hair loss solutions and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who got their flow back. Hims provides you with convenient and quality access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients that can grow your hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. And you could choose from personalized chewable, oral, spray, or serum treatments to find what works best for you. And the process is simple and 100% online, so there's no uncomfortable doctor's visits. And you could just answer a few questions and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. And if prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/majority. That's Hims, HIMS.com/majority for your personalized hair loss treatment options. Hims.com/majority. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See the website for full details and important safety information. You all know how important sleep is to me. That's why I'm obsessed with my Helix mattress, with everything that's going on from life to work to politics, sports. It's incredibly important to get a great night's sleep. And as I can attest, I've been using it for over 2 years now. This Helix mattress has dramatically improved my sleep quality. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, which is my mattress, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. So how will you know which Helix mattress works best for you and your body? Take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. I took the Helix Sleep Quiz, and that's why I was matched with my Luxe. It was such an upgrade from my previous mattress. I don't even think they're in the ballpark. And Helix knows there's no better way to test out a new mattress than by sleeping on it in your own home. That's why we offer a 100-night free trial and 10 to 15-year warranty to try it out for yourself. And Helix has been awarded the #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. It's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders. Go to sleep or go to helixsleep.com/majority. That's helixsleep.com/majority. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk growing kids should never eat. That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved, super-powered, chewable vitamin. While most children's vitamins are filled with 5 grams of sugar and can contribute to a variety of health issues, Hiya is made with 0 sugar and 0 gummy junk, yet it tastes great and it's perfect for picky eaters, i.e. kids. Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste that they love. Formulated with the help of nutritional experts, Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, concentration, teeth, bones, and more. It's non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, allergy-free, gelatin-free, nut-free, and everything else that you can imagine. Hiya is designed for kids of all ages and sent straight to your door so parents have one less thing to worry about. As you know, I'm a father and I'm always on the lookout for the best possible vitamins for my child to take. I'm so happy that I've come across Hiya Health. The ingredients are amazing and I don't have to worry about sugar or gummy junk because Hiya Health is made without that stuff. and is still able to keep the great taste, which is super important because that's how you get kids to eat it. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/majority. This deal is not available on the regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/majority and get your kids the full body nourishment that they need to grow into healthy adults.
Well, Jason, Trump has been about as bad as I've ever seen him. And we're going to go through some clips to demonstrate exactly how bad we're talking about here. Let's start with an appearance he did on Maria Bartiromo on Fox News.
Are you expecting chaos on Election Day?
No, I don't think so. Not from the side that votes for Trump.
But I'm just wondering if these outside agitators will start up on Election Day. Let's say you win. I mean, let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You have people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists.
Right.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful Election Day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of Election Day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
It's an inspirational closing message, Jason.
Yeah. Also that the former commander-in-chief doesn't know the National Guard is part of the military, but whatever. And also, and that apparently America is replete with villages.
He seems tired. Yeah. He seems really tired. His former Secretary of Defense went on TV and gave this response.
Do you fear that he would try to utilize the National Guard, the military, against U.S. citizens?
Yes, I do, of course, because I lived through that. And I saw over the summer of 2020 where President Trump and those around him wanted to use the National Guard in various capacities in cities such as Chicago and Portland and Seattle. And of course, there was a moment in time, as you just described, where he, on that early date in June, where he wanted to bring in active duty military as well. So that's what equally concerns me about his comment would be the use of the military in these types.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, he actually tried already.
Yeah.
So you have Trump saying it, not the first time he said something like this. You have his former Secretary of Defense saying, yeah, he tried this already. The governor of Virginia was on CNN. Somehow needs more evidence, Jason, that this is what Trump is saying. Let's go to this clip.
I don't think that he's referring to elected people in America. But I'm literally reading his quotes. I'm literally reading his quotes to you, and I played them earlier so you could hear that they were not made up by me. He's literally talking about, quote, radical left lunatics. And then one of those lunatics he mentioned was Congressman Adam Schiff. Criminals should be locked up. Migrants who are in this country illegally, who are violent, should be locked up and deported. I grant you all of that, and I am not denying that it's happening at all. So I am talking about, but I'm talking about Donald Trump saying that he wants to use the National Guard and the military to go after the left. That's what he's saying.
I don't believe that's what he's saying. But listen, you and I are going to argue about that. But I would suggest if you would also.
I played the quote and I read it to you.
If you would also
you
balance
can wish that he weren't saying that, but that's what he's saying.
This is the Austin Powers Swedish penis enlarger moment where it's just one after another. It's like, actually, we have Trump on the line right now. He'll say it for you.
Good for Jake, though, for just being like, no, don't tell me that my eyes are lying to me. All of this, and I know we're going to have a couple more clips here. When people were debating whether it was a good strategy for Trump to decide not to debate again, or whether it was a good strategy for Trump to not do the 60 Minutes interview where he would be compared side by side to Kamala Harris, This is why, because Trump is that like the high school relationship that you have nostalgia for, but then if you really think about it, you're like, that was not a good relationship. We were not a good match. That was never going to work. But the idea of that feeling that you had at that time, the idea of that person might be preferable. That's Trump. Trump, the idea of him, whether you're a Trumper or whether you're like an independent, conservative leaning independent who might be predisposed to vote for a regular Republican, the idea of Trump as a candidate is far preferable to the reality of Trump candidate. And so as a result, I feel like that's what they're dealing with. Every time they put the real Trump out there, they suffer as a result.
And, he's been all over the place, Trump himself. Like we talked about Call Her Daddy with Harris last week. Trump has been doing this sort of bro pod circuit. He went on this podcast, I think it's called Flagrant 2 or Flagrant 1 with Andrew Schultz, who's a comedian. Basically, Schultz laughed in his face when Trump said he was truthful or honest. Let's go to this clip.
I have a hard time doing it to them because I'm basically a truthful person, but frankly,
I mean, I watched this whole interview and I couldn't, maybe this is what Schultz wanted. I couldn't tell exactly what Schultz was getting at with this interview. And I think that's probably for the best for Schultz, given he probably has a divided audience. But I don't think it was a very good appearance for Trump, because there were a lot of moments like that. There was a moment where Trump was just meandering and Schultz was kind of mocking him subtly. And I'm like, yeah, this is not a great appearance.
Yeah, man. The problem I have here is, one, we know that when these appearances go poorly, and particularly when there's viral clips that can be played, we know that that is not good for him, right? Particularly this close to the election. But when he says things like that we know he wants to do, and he's tried to do, like, I'm going to call the military out on my political adversaries. The problem we run into is that there were just enough people who cared more about the country than about themselves, and to lean forward in the first Trump administration and stop that stuff from happening. And I don't know how you get across to people and to voters, and this is the problem we're having right now. How do you get across to voters what could happen when Americans are basically optimistic about America holding together, right? And that's why so many people, even though we shouldn't have been, so many people were shocked when Roe was struck down, because Americans have a basic belief that the worst things won't happen. And so it's just very hard to figure out, how do you get that across to people? I don't know.
Yeah, and mocking him and laughing at him, there's part of me that thinks that, the unseriousness of him is a helpful frame, but it also comes with risks, because it's hard to then convince people that he's a threat.
Right.
If he's funny and it's like, oh, this guy doesn't really mean what he's saying, that's risky too. So it really is a bit of a bind. When you talk about more serious content, he did this Economic Club of New York interview, and there's a couple clips from it that are worth showing here. Let's start with when he was asked about January 6th.
If you look at the events of January the 6th, 2021, it showed to many people America's democracy was unruly and violent. Only 3 weeks to go to the election. Will you commit now to respecting and encouraging a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, you had a peaceful transfer of power.
You had a peaceful transfer of power. You had a peaceful... Come on, President Trump. You had a peaceful transfer of power compared with Venezuela, but it was by far the worst transfer of power for a long time.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because this is what they like to do. This is what they like to do. It's very interesting.
The question, President Trump, is would you respect the decision?
When I found out about this interview, I did a little check. He's a man that has not been a big Trump fan over the years. So I had a choice. Do I do this interview or not? I'm glad I did it. But do I do this interview, or do I disappoint a lot of people? Because I know a lot of people in the audience.
I mean, Ravi, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't think he's going to respect the outcome if he loses.
No. And this guy, I'm not familiar with this Bloomberg editor, but he kept doing this thing, which I thought was actually a sir, this is a Wendy's approach to interviewing, where it's like, he'd be like, I just asked you if you're going to respect the outcome. There was another moment where he asked about Google that just made me laugh. Let's go to this.
Justice Department is thinking about breaking up Alphabet, as Google likes to be known now. Should Google be broken up?
I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls and got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued them that they should be allowed to put those bad votes and illegal votes back in and let the people vote. So I haven't gotten over that. A lot of people have seen that. They can't even believe it.
The question is about Google, President Trump.
Yeah, look, Google's got a lot of power. They're very bad to me, very, very bad to me. I mean, I can speak from that standpoint.
Yeah, the search engine is bad for you because you said a lot of dumb stuff.
Sir, the question was about Google.
Sure, this is a Wendy's.
And then
you have to wear pants here.
He's given an opportunity to clean up his answer. Of course, he goes to how Google treats him, which, again, like, you got to think, if you have any sense of optimism about this election, you got to think the average person looking at that is like, this is not a person focused on me. Like that, if we got to hold on to anything between now and the election, it's got to be that fact, right?
This is not a person focused at all. Like, the words Justice Department appeared in the first question early in the question, and he didn't hear the rest. Or best case scenario, he did the politician thing where he was like, I don't like this question. I will pretend you asked a different question. That's the best case scenario there.
Right. There was one question above all that alarmed me, and this had to do with Vladimir Putin.
You just mentioned Putin, though. And this has been this controversy of the past week. Can you say yes or no whether you have talked to Vladimir Putin since you stopped being president?
Well, I don't comment on that, but I will tell you that if I did, it's a smart thing.
Didn't OJ write a book that was like,
if I did it?
If I did, I mean, obviously he's been talking to Putin. I mean,
the amount of unprecedented things that just occurred in the last 5 minutes of clips that we just talked about is unbelievable. And this is where you've got to, like, look, the election hasn't happened yet. I think there's this despondency that people have, and there's this sense of inevitability, and there's also, it's mixed with some revisionism about the past that, like, Trump's words don't cost him. They did cost him. They costed 2022, the Republicans. They costed Trump the election in 2020. Yeah, it's closer than we'd want. But if you think about where we are today, we are closer today than we ever could have imagined at the beginning of the summer. That's where we are today. And you can't be despondent about this. You can't have a sense of inevitability that, oh, Trump's words won't cost him. Bank them, mention them, share them. That is the best you can do here between now and the election to get us to one vote more than necessary to get the electoral votes that we need.
I just want to vote. So I just let's vote and get it over with. That's how I feel. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Trump feels the same way. The dude is exhausted. I mean, the guy's fighting for his freedom, right? Like, he is running for president to stay out of prison. That's his only motivation. And yet, even he is like, you can tell by his energy, is so over this, doesn't want to do it anymore. Everybody feels that way.
Well, I'm gonna spare the audience the rest of these sort of crazy Trump clips.
Hold on, I have not seen the football one, and I want.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Trump was asked why he didn't play football as a child.
And I played football too. I didn't particularly like it.
What position were you?
No, I didn't like it. I played tight end.
Yeah. Can block.
And I didn't like,
you had some hands. We got Delaney Walker behind.
I could catch the ball good, but I didn't particularly like having some guy that was lifting weights all day long and came from a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he sees me, and they were tackling hard.
Yeah, that's fine. That's about what I thought. Like, just a little bit of light racism. And
and also he's weak. This is Mr. Bone Spurs, right? Like, he's a fragile guy.
This is the guy who started the whole football has gone soft, and he's like, well, I didn't like being tackled.
Well, let's talk quickly about Harris here. She's been expanding her press tour. She went on Charlemagne. I thought it was a really good appearance. Charlemagne has a huge radio audience.
Yeah, but Ravi, can I say something about the last clip? If you had to bet your paycheck on whether Trump ever wore a pair of pads and played tight end, what would your bet be?
No, and I actually just read the book on his background. He apparently he did play baseball, was really bad. I think he had like a 1-something batting average or something, but was obviously very confident in his own abilities.
I mean, because he said he played football, I'm like, he definitely didn't do that.
Of course he didn't. It certainly wasn't in the book I read about his background. Okay, Harris on Charlemagne. I thought she was pretty good, and she was asked about her use of talking points. Let's go to this clip.
Now, one thing they've been saying, a lot of your press hits get criticized. Folks say you come off as very scripted. They say you like to stick to your talking points, and some media says you have.
That would be called discipline.
Ooh, okay. Speak to that.
But go on.
No, I was
Yeah, she's right.
Yeah, I thought it was a good answer. She is doing Fox News tonight. You got to imagine this subject's going to come up. That's going to be a very important interview. There are rumors that both she and Trump are going to appear on Rogan. I haven't seen those confirmed yet. I think that's a good idea for her. It's offense for her because those are his people. So if she overperforms there, that's good news for her.
There are going to be people on the left who have an issue with her going on Rogan.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? You're trying to win an election. But also, like, maybe I'm crazy. I think that's going to go well. Like, Rogan, for all the problems that people can legitimately have with him, he doesn't really have an agenda. He has bias, no doubt. He has a bro-oriented, conservative-leaning bias, but he doesn't have an agenda other than he wants to make good content. And so I actually think that somebody with the force of personality that she has, if she goes into that the way I expect she will, for one thing, I think that she will slightly charm him in a way that will be disarming and therefore charm the audience.
Just smoke up a blunt,
I don't think she should do that.
Yeah, I would actually love to see
just came across as too much.
The one thing she's got to watch out for is Rogan's close with people like Ben Shapiro. So you got to imagine he's going to be fed questions by some of those types of people. They're going to be pretty sharp questions. But again, like, you handle those questions well, you impress people, and it's all offense, right? The goal for her, I was asked this question. I did a forum the other day in Dumbo in Brooklyn. Somebody asked me, here's this person in my life. They hate Trump, but I can't see them vote for Harris. I was like, a non-vote is a win. Just get them not to vote. It's like, that's the best you could hope for with some of these people.
The Rogan thing, what she has to watch for is, because it's a little similar. I think didn't you do Bill Maher's show?
No, one of my colleagues did. Yeah,
okay.
I almost did Maher.
Okay,
last minute.
I've done it a couple of times, and the thing, they're similar in this way, is that when you go on Bill Maher's show, you have to be like loose and personable and everything, and you have to be ready to disavow anything that he says at any given time, right? And that's where she's got to be loose, ready to go, fully conversational, comfortable being there, and ready to be like, whoa. The way you said that, you got to ready to push back and not do that natural human thing when you're one-on-one with somebody and they say something kind of offensive, but it's not directed at you, to just kind of let it slide and then, ingratiate. You can't do that when it's being recorded. That's the challenge of it.
Well, Jason, we're going to run out of time here, and we got a couple other things I would love to talk about, but I suggest let's talk down ballot if that works for you. I'd love to talk about Colin Allred because I continue to be a big believer in this race. I think he's doing extremely well, and his debate with Ted Cruz was electric. Whoever prepared Allred, kudos to Allred and his team. I thought he did really well. If it's cool with you, I'd love to go to some of these clips from.
Let's do it.
All right. So Allred was asked about trans bathrooms, which obviously is on the mind of every voter in this country. Here's what he said.
This is a desperate, last-second attempt by Senator Cruz to distract you because he can't defend his own record. Listen, I'm a dad. I'm a Christian. Of course, I don't support these ridiculous things that he's talking about. But what he wants you thinking about is kids in bathrooms, so you're not thinking about women in hospitals, because it's indefensible. It's indefensible that we have Texas women being turned away from hospitals, bleeding out in their cars, in waiting rooms, being found by their husbands. So all of a sudden, and this is a good one, all of a sudden, the protector of women and girls is going to be Senator Cruz, who thinks it's perfectly reasonable that if a girl is raped by a relative of hers, a victim of incest, that she should be forced to carry that child to term and give birth to it. You think that's perfectly reasonable, but now you're going to set yourself up as a protector of women and girls? It's laughable. And listen, he's trying to distract you because what can he run on? I've never seen somebody who runs for office on what he hasn't done. He's been one of the least productive senators in the entire country. And you know that. I talk to Texans all the time who say, I can't think of anything Ted Cruz has done to help me in my life. When I'm your senator, I'll keep focused on issues that matter to you, on lowering your costs, on securing the border, on restoring a woman's right to choose. That's what I'll be focused on.
Senator Cruz.
Yeah. You know what he's doing really well? He's assigning motive. Voters like it when you peel back the curtain and say, okay, here's what that politician just did. You know, one of the best moments of that was in the 2016 debates for the Republican primary when Chris Christie kept telling you what Marco Rubio was doing and why he was doing it. And then Marco Rubio kept doing it. And then he kept pointing it out. Like, it really works.
Jason, this was one of the greatest ass kickings in the history of debates I've ever seen, honestly. Like, and this is a year that has brought us many one-sided debates, to say the least. Allred absolutely crushed him. I could play clips forever, but let's just do one more. This is about immigration and the border.
And thank you for the question. This is personal for me. My family's from Brownsville. My grandfather was a customs officer there. He joined the Customs Department in 1939. It's where my mom and my aunt were born and raised and where I spent a lot of my childhood. And I know that our border communities are real places where folks are trying to raise their families and get ahead. But time and again, Senator Cruz treats our border communities like he's going on some kind of a safari. He comes down, he puts on his outdoor clothes, he tries to look tough, and he goes back to Washington and does nothing to help. In fact, he does worse than nothing. When the toughest border security bill in a generation came up in the United States Senate, $20 billion for border security, he said, we don't need a border bill. That's what he said. And, listen, this is a pattern for him. He's never there for us when we need him. When the lights went out in the energy capital of the world, he went to Cancun. On January 6th, when a mob was storming the Capitol, he was hiding in a supply closet. And when the toughest border security bill in a generation came up in the United States Senate, he took it down. We don't have to have a senator like this. Let me be very clear. I believe in physical barriers as part of a comprehensive strategy to secure the border. We had a bill for $20 billion for 1,000 new Border Patrol agents, for more immigration judges, more asylum officers to help us deal with the backlog. I wanted to make sure we passed that. When I'm in the Senate, we will. And we'll also fix our broken legal immigration system. Senator Cruz has had forever, and he's done nothing to solve this problem. Why would we believe that he will with 6 more years?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I think you're at your best when you're taking on an incumbent, when you seem to be speaking for everybody. And that's particularly hard to do for a member of Congress, but that's what he's doing. That's the framing. The framing is us. He has not done this for us. We have not gotten what we needed from him. I think that's really smart.
I would not be shocked if Allred pulls this thing out. Like, he's obviously a humongous underdog, but the polling is tight enough. It's within a few points in every poll out there. We've been disappointed so many times with Texas, but
that'd be fun.
This is what it looks like, right? This is a great candidate on our side, a shit candidate on their side, a guy who's taken for granted his voters, a huge state that's really hard to poll properly with a lot of shifting demographics. Let's ride. I'm ready for that one. That would be a huge, huge shocker if we were able to do that.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot that we couldn't cover today, but I want to take one more break. When we come back, we have a great guest where we can zoom out and talk about a really important issue. We'll be right back.
Are you interested in having hair that grows faster, stronger, and longer, having visibly thicker volume, experiencing noticeably less shedding? All of this is possible with Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting key root causes of thinning: stress, hormones, aging, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole body health. While many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol men's hair growth supplement for 6 months, and 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol women's hair growth supplement for 6 months. With a Nutrafol subscription, building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription required. Automated deliveries and free shipping keep you on track. Plus, you can save up to 20%. You'll have access to free naturopathic doctor consults, and a Headspace membership is included. Get results you can run your fingers through. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code MAJORITY. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code MAJORITY. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code MAJORITY.
As the crisp fall air rolls in and the leaves begin to change, don't rely on pumpkin to spice up your life. Embrace the natural power of cannabis this fall with Via. Whether you're lounging by the fire or exploring new adventures, Via's premium, federally legal cannabis products are your perfect companion. Farmed and crafted with care in the U.S. and trusted by over 500,000 customers, Via has a product for everyone. Via is well known for their premium THCA flower grown indoors in state-of-the-art facilities and harvested at peak THCA levels to emphasize the natural aroma and flavor. Via is constantly adding new strains to its website every week, as they're always receiving fresh new strains from their independent farms harvest. The THCA flower strains are grown with care and rigorously tested to ensure the highest quality, free from harsh pesticides or nasty chemicals. Via just launched their high THCA flower in 7-gram and 28-gram bags and brand new flavors for the THCA vape line, so you have more options than ever to blaze your own trail. Via is also well renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, soothing topicals, and calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And the best part is that Via legally ships to nearly all states in the U.S. in discreet packaging directly to your door with worry-free guarantees, no medical card required. So if you're 23 plus, check out the link in Via's description, in our description, for 15% off. And I have to say, I just got through all these descriptions, right? I love this stuff. I've been cutting down alcohol significantly in my life, and I've replaced it in part with some of these Via THC gummies. I took some the other day, watched a movie, and it was awesome. They give you this box that's got all sorts of cool stuff in it. I was talking to Jason about it. It's like, this was one of those game-changing sponsors where I'm like, okay, this is exactly what I've been looking for in my life. I've been starting to experiment with different types of gummies, and they just give you all kinds of options, and they do a really good job of describing, well, this is what you want to take before you go to sleep. This is what you want to kind of take before you watch a movie. This is what you might want to take in the morning, right? Lots of different options. I love it. Unlock the power of nature with Via's organic and vegan hemp extracts, perfect for relaxation and rejuvenation. Via is the only lifestyle hemp brand. They use compounds found in hemp. And if you're 21 plus, check out the link in Via in our description and use the code MAJORITY to receive 15% off. So use the code MAJORITY. And after your purchase, they ask you how you heard about them. Please support the show by telling them that we sent you. This fall, enhance your everyday with Via.
All right, now we're joined by Kristen Dumais. Kristen is a New York Times bestselling author and professor of history and gender studies at Calvin University. She holds a PhD from the University of Notre Dame, and her research focuses on the intersection of gender, religion, and politics. She has written for the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC News, Religion News Service, and Christianity Today, and has been interviewed on NPR, CBS, and the BBC. And now, much bigger deal, this show. Her most recent book is Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. And her new documentary that she's involved with is called For Our Daughters. Kristen, how you doing?
Hey, good to be with you.
It is good to have you. Tell us about the documentary.
Yeah, the documentary is inspired by the final chapter of Jesus and John Wayne. The book looks at this connection between evangelical masculinity and militant Christian nationalism throughout the last half century. And the final chapter deals with the consequences of that for women inside their spaces, particularly abuse of power and sexual abuse. And so this film, For Our Daughters, takes a hard look at that culture that facilitates and not just abuse, but also cover up of abuse. And it connects it directly to the Christian nationalist threat facing our country today.
Okay, so it's aimed at, I mean, it's called For Our Daughters. So I'm going on a limb and gonna guess that it's aimed at like white evangelical men, or at men to better understand what is going on. Is that sort of the idea here?
The title was inspired by two different things. One, the survivors themselves, two of them in the film, talk about how what prompted them to finally go public and finally speak out against the abuse and the cover up was when they had daughters of their own. And they saw that, it was ridiculous that they were blamed, that this happens over and over again. It's the victims who are blamed in these spaces, and the perpetrators are defended and often promoted. And so it was their own daughters that inspired them to speak out. But it's also inspired by something that happened just months after Jesus and John Wayne came out. A couple of conservative women reached out to me, conservative evangelical women, and I thought they might, have a critique of my book. It can get a little harsh in places, but that wasn't it. They said, Kristen, thank you. It's too late for us, but we want something different for our daughters. And so in that spirit, the film For Our Daughters offers a different vision going forward.
And we're heading towards this election, and I think there are sort of two sort of broad strokes groups that are at the heart of your book that cut different ways, right? One is the evangelical community, which the white evangelical community goes overwhelmingly for Republicans and have been remarkably loyal despite the major character flaws of the man at the top. I'm sure you have something to say about that. But also at the same time, Harris has been performing better with college educated white women in particular than anybody before. Is there some daylight there? Like, have you picked up any trends or any opportunities for Harris to peel off a segment of the evangelical vote?
Having been watching these numbers for a very long time, dating back to 2015, actually, I'm not particularly optimistic that we're going to see much movement at all in the white evangelical sector of the electorate. There's been talk of that for nearly a decade now, and here we are. The latest poll puts it at 82% of white evangelicals who plan to vote for Donald Trump. So we're not seeing much movement on that front, but you're exactly right. It's right at that intersection. When we look at women and look at Christian women as well, this film is really kind of speaking to that demographic, saying, you have a lot of things to think about when you cast your vote. We want you to add these things to the list and think about your daughters and their future.
When we talk about like the white evangelical vote being relatively monolithic for the right, that makes sense. I agree with you. That's been the pattern. But how much of sort of what you've learned about this population bleeds over into just sort of conservative leaning or Midwestern or Southern white Americans? Like, how to what degree is sort of the, not talking about it, not acknowledging it? It just feels like they don't have a monopoly on it, obviously.
Absolutely. That's a really important point. And what I can say, having written a book on white evangelicals, I get to talk a lot about white evangelicals. But sometimes I worry that we overemphasize that category and that religious category. When we look at the white mainline, for example, mainline Christians, there we have also, high numbers who are voting for Trump, but we see more movement possible, I think, in those spaces. Also, just, as you say, Midwestern white folks and all of these kind of demographics kind of overlap in many cases. I think, too, that evangelicals, although pollsters like to have very neat boxes, tidy boxes to place them in, as a cultural historian, I can say that the influence of evangelicalism spills out far beyond those little boxes. Beyond evangelical churches, we're talking about this ideology that's promoted through Christian radio, Christian publishing, this vast media ecosystem that people on the outside are largely unaware of. But this reaches people in the mainline. It reaches people who don't go to church. And so it's a broader cultural movement that we're talking about. And this film addresses the dynamics within that cultural space.
And one thing I've noticed, my dad is a big MAGA guy. He's even running for office as a MAGA politician, but he's not a evangelical Christian. But there's something that in his psychology that I wonder whether it's also relevant for some of the evangelical males out there, which is a permission structure. My dad's been married 4 times, probably hasn't been the greatest husband at various points. He's made a lot of mistakes. I think when they see somebody like Trump, it almost absolves them of their sins. It's like, oh, this is an ethical. This is like an excuse for my decisions of behavior. This is in many ways a role model. This is a very leading question, but do you see any of that within the white evangelical community? You know, I'm vaguely aware of some hypocrisy at some of the highest levels of the evangelical community.
Yes, permission structure is a good way to put it, actually. And yeah, I came across these stories of abuse not because I set out to study abuse in evangelical spaces. I set out to study evangelical views of masculinity as it was intertwined with militant Christian nationalism. And all of these cases of abuse started surfacing through that research. And a common theme that I saw was this conception of power. The power of the patriarchal authority inside these Christian spaces, this sense of a God ordained hierarchy, and that certain people are just privileged and ought to have that power and authority, and other people are designed, created to submit to that authority. And that can very quickly go very wrong. And so that's a kind of underlying thread here. And that's what we see happening in this connection to the broader Christian nationalist agenda as well. The idea that a certain subset, Christian nationalists, people who have their particular view of Christianity, have the right, the privilege to rule the nation. And, if we look at Project 2025, we can really see the Christian nationalist fingerprints all over it. There, the vision of the Constitution put forward is that the Constitution guarantees Americans the right to do what they ought to do, not what they want to do. Well, who determines what they ought to do, right? The guys writing that document think that they ought to determine that, not the Constitution as we understand it.
And I mean, like, when I think about your book, it's Jesus and John Wayne. I mean, I know plenty of men who live in rural or ex-urban areas who don't go to church, and who fit into everything you're describing, and probably don't know very many men who don't think this way. And it just feels to me like so much of this in America now is geographic as well, right? I mean, you were talking about the radio stations. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're evangelical. If that's the radio station in the middle of the dial where you live, which is frequently the case in rural areas, you're just exposed to the idea that it's almost like, well, this is just how the world works.
Absolutely. This is how the world works. If you're in a Christian space, this is what it is to be a Christian. This is just, how you vote. This is just how the world works. Absolutely. So I live in Michigan. I grew up in small town in Iowa. And, so I move in these spaces. And at the same time, this kind of evangelical ideology is not just rural, not at all. And although they will often present themselves as such, the kind of working class or rural, the true Americans. But in fact, there is a lot of money backing these networks and these organizations, and a strong suburban presence of these networks. And so, although they would like to present themselves as this very earthy, grassroots, rural working class sort of thing, and that's where this vision of masculinity and masculine power comes in really handy. In fact, when you look at their funding networks, it's a whole other story.
Well, and that's why Josh Hawley writes a book called Manhood, right? Like I mean, that's when you talk about it as the intersection between it and Christian nationalism, it's because it seems to me that it works like this. It's like, okay, this is what it means to be Christian, and to be Christian is to be American, and to be American is to be masculine. And so if you, as a dude, want to be seen as a real man, you will behave this way, and you will see the world this way. And you're right, that doesn't have a geographic target. I mean, it's just sort of, they're trying to merge all three.
Yeah, it's a cultural identity, really, right? This is identity politics on the right. And but what I saw in my research for the book, which I started in the early 2000s, that's when I started working on the topic of evangelical masculinity. So I've been tracking this for a very long time, and this has been preached from pulpits. Millions of books, Christian books, have been sold, but in Christian bookstores, promoting this idea of masculinity, a real militant conception of masculinity, and linking that always with culture wars politics. So that God made man to be aggressive so that he can fight to defend faith, family, and nation. Exactly what that looks like, right, is open to interpretation, but we see some of that today. And Josh Hawley is a perfect example. He comes from this subculture, and we can see him raising his fists on January 6th.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. People who are, this show is not just for like people who are running for office or staffers, that kind of thing. This is for like regular folks who want to convince the people in their circle, their social circle, their coworkers, that kind of thing, not to vote for Trump, not to vote for right-wing candidates. What is your advice on how to sort of penetrate this world?
It is really difficult to do that, as you know, and it works best through relationships and, through those conversations and through asking questions. But one of the things that we do in this film, which is quite critical of certain conservative evangelical pastors and spaces, is we show that this is not the only way to be a Christian. Not at all. Christian nationalism thrives on this us versus them mentality, that if you are not with us, you are against us. And if you're against us, you're against Christianity, you're against God. What this film does is it presents women themselves and pastors saying, no, this is not, the Jesus of the scriptures is not this militant warrior Christ. And to be a Christian is about doing justice and telling the truth. And it's not about abuse, and it's not about covering up that abuse. And so it really is speaking to Christians on their own terms, as well as providing this larger critique. And I think that's important, to meet people where they're at and to show them that their own values that they hold to actually have some political implications that they need to contend with.
Well, Kristen, thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing this. Tell folks where they can see the film, where they can get the book, and where they can find you.
Yeah, the film is available online. It's on YouTube, For Our Daughters, and you can go to forourdaughtersfilm.com, find it there as well, find resources for survivors, resources for sharing. And I'm on social media at KKDumez, multiple platforms. That's KKDUMEZ. And I am also on Substack and write a lot there.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Ravi.
Well, okay. Well, this is becoming sports corner, but I can't help myself. What a week of sports. First of all, sorry about the Royals. I know that you were at one of those games. I'm sure it was great anyway. I was texting you about it. True. You said True had a good time nonetheless.
We had a good time, and anybody who's interested in, I doubt there's that many, in my thoughts on the Royals season and on Kansas City, I wrote a long piece for my friend Joe Pisnansky on his Substack, which people can find linked on all my social media. It was very fun to write.
And, we're now in this place where we're staring down the possibility of a Subway Series. Monday night, I was texting with you. What a sports night in New York. You had the Yankees winning, the Mets winning, both in the what do you call them? The
division series.
Division series. And then an absolutely ugly win by the Buffalo Bills on a night that just absolutely demoralized the Jets franchise, which was beautiful.
I guess it was the CS, actually. It was the championship series. But anyway, yeah. And it was funny. And I was like, not so much the Jets. You were like, well, Buffalo.
Well, it was, they're the only team that plays in New York. Jets are a New Jersey team. And it was just such a great sports night. And I have this running text thread with my Jets friends in my life, which is a lot of people I grew up with, some of my closest friends. And it's funny because I used to just make fun of them constantly through this text thread, especially last year when it was it felt like it was actually a real rivalry. And then it's just such a sad franchise that I actually wrote them back after the game. I was like, hey man, good game, guys, which is what you do to me because you feel bad whenever you guys beat us. It's like you don't have any spirit to it anymore. You're not like, oh man, we just crushed you guys or whatever. It's just like you feel bad somewhat. So it's like, I was like, hey man, good game. And they wrote back to a person. They're like, that wasn't a good game. It's like, this is terrible. So they're in a really bad place. But I was watching Rodgers' press conference afterwards, and
he just blamed everybody else.
To his credit, though, he did say the refs were equally bad for each team. which was actually very helpful.
Yeah,
Because,
he was too busy blaming his wide receivers.
yeah, he did that. He did that for sure. But it's weird because the team has a lot of holes in it. We just plugged one of them with Amari Cooper, which is a really good signing. And it's a flawed team this year, but still very much in it. And weirdly, I thought we had a better roster last year, but we were in much more trouble this time last year than we are now because we had real division rivals. Whereas I may live to regret this, but the state of the Jets, Patriots, and Dolphins have it such that we can work out our flaws all year. You guys know what this is like because you've had some really rough division foes over the years. I'm like, wow, okay, we actually have a little bit of time to right the ship. So I'm actually feeling relatively good, even though we had 2 brutal losses over the previous 2 weeks.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. The Chiefs are doing great too. So I'm not too worried about it.
What's weird is I actually feel less scared of the Chiefs this year than any other year, despite the fact that you guys are undefeated.
That's the mistake people make every year.
Well, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for this match. I'm feeling really good about our upcoming matchup. I'm really excited about it.
Well, my one for us is I want to promote something real quick. So this Saturday, the 19th, I will be in Des Moines, Iowa, just giving a little short speech at a canvas kickoff for a Democratic candidate in a red to blue district. Landon Backham is a combat veteran who asked me to come up and I don't do a lot of this, as you know, but I'm going to be sort of in the area. And so anybody who's interested, it's 10 a.m. this Saturday, October 19th, the office of Matt Blake and Tiara Mays Sims, which is at 5965 Merle Hay Road in Johnston, Iowa, but it's in the Des Moines area. So 10 a.m. Come out, canvas. It's an opportunity to flip a district. But if you will come out and canvas, and if you have any interest in meeting me and hearing what I have to say in person and being like, oh, wow, he's taller or shorter or whiter or whatever the heck, or his hair is grayer than I expected. However, whatever you're curious about, I will be there this Saturday.
It reminds me we should talk. Send us messages if this is of any interest to you listeners. We haven't done an in-person event since COVID. So maybe maybe after the election, maybe around inauguration, one way or the other, we should consider something maybe in Kansas City again.
I think that'd be fun. I'm for it. I like the idea.
Maybe if there's some January football in Kansas City.
But nobody's going to want to come outside for that. But yes, but so we could find a nice, because I'm referring to last time we were like, we'll do the majority 54 tailgate. And some people did come around, but most people are like, it's freezing out here. So
I need to go if we ever get that chance again, I need to go back and exercise my demons. Like that was a truly horrendous day.
It could create more demons. I mean, just be careful. All right. That was a rough one for you. It was good memory for us. All right. You can find myself at Jason Kander everywhere. And Ravi is at Ravi M. Gupta. Thanks, everybody. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.